Hello, and welcome to another Walkie Talkie on a lovely Thursday morning in January. And it's not too bad today. It looks colder than it actually is, to be honest. It really actually, well, there's a little chill in the air, obviously, because it's winter, but it's not frozen. But yeah, it's all right. Nice brisk walk. So I actually have a topic today for us to get into, and that topic is how safe are our digital games? All our games on Steam and GOG, Epic Games Store, EA, the PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, the Nintendo Online, all of those games that we've downloaded digitally and we've paid a lot of money for. How safe are they? We'll get into that when we get into the park. It sounds like the carpet monsters are out, so there'll probably be a bit of an edit here because I'm not fighting against the collective noise of rugrats. So there'll probably be a jump cut in a minute. So yeah, I think it should be quite an interesting topic, and certainly one that, well, I think we should be concerned about. I really do. I think it should be something that is considered, particularly in an age. Look at the state of it around here. What an absolute tip. Anyhow, yeah, got a few thoughts on the whole issue of digital games and the digital distribution side of things and the security of it. What we actually can end up happening. What? It's a squirrel scaling the fence. So, the hell's that come? Must have come from that tree. A large log on the ground there. I need to come and tidy this place up. That won't happen. That's for certain. So yeah, we'll get on to that. Talk about that when we get there. Lovely. So yeah, I'm gonna pop in the shop, get some cheese to put in the tea tonight. I'm gonna do that, and I will catch up with you in a bit. So I'll see you in a minute. Well, here we are in the park again. So I've got my cheese and my paper. So what we're gonna talk about are digital games, our digital downloads. Not just games, but movies, music. Just how safe is it? How how secure is it? But more importantly, the security of these companies that run these services, and how these companies choose to manage these services. I go back to Microsoft and Zoom, which was their supposed competitor to iTunes. Some of you might not know what it is. Well, Microsoft did a big thing in promoting it at the time. Not only was it a source for music, but they were actively encouraging podcast hosting on there. They had a device that you could run this thing. Remember the Windows Phone? Microsoft's brief dalliance into the smartphone area, which they promptly ceased doing when it was becoming apparent that they couldn't compete with Android or Apple. They ceased. They shut the service down. And if you had stuff stored on a digital library there, it was gone. It was quite sudden. Now, whether you had the ability to download that stuff onto a device and access it locally, I don't know. I never subscribed to Zune and didn't have it. No interest in it at all. I've either been in the iPhone or Android camp. I didn't bother with Windows Phone. I try to minimize my exposure to that type of differing platforms as much as possible. The reason I have Android and iOS, Apple, is because I own an Android phone and I own an iPhone, and it's simply because I at one point switched between the two, but retain my Android phone, for the practical purposes of accessing Android content. So yeah, that's why I have those two, but I won't be getting any more. I'm okay with what I've got. But the point is, stuff I've got like iTunes and music that God, I'm not doing a very good job here with the flow of speech, am I? But I got an iPod years and years ago. It was at the iPod Nano, to listen to music, because when I was working, I used to do a lot of walking to and from work, and I had a CD player, but it was a bit bulky. So, and I like to listen to podcasts. So I had an iPod, and so I had iTunes to download stuff to. I had a handful of music as well on there, just to check it out, really. But it was chiefly to listen to podcasts, gaming podcasts. I mean, I'm going way back in the day. Ricky Gervais's one that he did back in the day. Yeah, we're going that far back. And yeah, It was good. It was a good little device. It was convenient. It was small. It didn't eat the batteries like my portable CD player did. And so it was great, but I was always a bit wary. I thought, well, what would happen to all of this content if Apple shut down their iTunes? Now, it didn't connect. When you connected that thing online, you had to do it through a computer, or you could. I think you could do it wirelessly. I can't remember. But anyway, that's how you installed stuff on it. Was through a computer, through iTunes. And the issue is, that's all great, because yes, I am listening to the stuff offline. I'm walking down the road. It's not, the iPod wasn't connected to the internet. But the thing is, what would happen if iTunes went away and that iPod malfunctioned, if it broke down? What if it was no longer functioning? How would I get access to all of that stuff that I've bought if the online store is gone and the device that I had them stored on locally no longer functions? Well, there's the hitch. I wouldn't be able to. It'd be gone permanently. And there would be no way of retrieving that stuff. Not easily. And so that set me about thinking. And it's kind of what put me, one of the reasons, aside from quality purposes, but it was also one of the reasons that I ceased buying music digitally after my brief dalliance with it. I made that conscious decision that if these libraries can be shut down and your device that you've got your music on malfunctions, which, let's face it, electronic devices break down after time, no matter how well you look after them. They will start to develop faults. That would be it. And the more stuff you've got, the more it disappears, the more you lose. So that's why I stopped doing that. But as that was, oh God, how many years ago? You're probably going back to probably the early 2000s. Maybe around, I'll say early 2000s, maybe about, I don't know, 2007, 2008 maybe. Quite a few years ago. And since then we've seen the proliferation of digital distribution to the point where it's now much more difficult to go out there and buy physical media than it is to digitally download the stuff. And that's a problem. For me personally, I think that is a problem. I'm not keen on it. Because, again, you're faced with a problem. What do you do if your library becomes unavailable? What do you do then? What do you do if all of those games or albums or books, the digital distribution of those becomes unavailable? You've lost all that stuff. I mean, when you have physical media, if the technology goes away, in terms, like with a book, you've still got a book. So long as you've got something that functions, you can still play your games on a disc. You can still play games on cartridge, you can still listen to music on CD. Now, yeah, you can argue, well, what if compact disc technology goes away? Well, I mean, that's a very real thing. Buying CD players now is, I mean, it's still relatively easy, but you're not getting the major manufacturers anymore selling them in the numbers that they used to. I mean, I've just bought this Panasonic one, and it's great. But there was a lot of manufacturers that I'd never heard of in that sort of mid price range. You know, years ago you would have Sharp, Sony, Sanyo, Aiwa, Panasonic, Pioneer, Philips, loads, absolutely loads. These days, of recognizable names, in that range, I only saw Panasonic and Philips. There was no Sony, no Sharp, no Sanyo, no Aiwa. I don't even know if some of these, well, I know Sony exist, obviously, but I don't know about any of the others. So that's a concern for me. But I think that I have equal concern with regards to my Steam library, my GOG library. I have concern about that. Because what if Valve go under? What if GOG goes under? What happens then? I mean, I can't download all my games that I've got. I don't have the storage space. So what happens? I lose those games. I mean, you can make the assumption that some business or other company would come along and take them over, but what if they don't? Or what if they do and want you to pay to renew the license for these games? Because that's what you get. You're paying for a license, you're not buying the game. You're paying for a license which allows you to play that game. And that license can be revoked at any time. And that is the concern. You know, Valve could just come along one day and go, yeah, you know what, you have to pay a flat fee of, say, £100 to update all the licenses for the games that you've got in your library. Well, what could you do about that? If you don't pay it, any games that maybe you don't have downloaded, or maybe the ones even you do have downloaded, given the nature of online connectivity these days, you lose access to it all, and you will be screwed. Because I can guarantee in the small print and these online services, there will be a section where they reserve the right to do that, and there's nothing you can do. And even if they were in the wrong, you would have to have a class action lawsuit. Because these things cost a lot of money. They cost a hell of a lot of money to do. So it's not a simple and straightforward thing. You can't just turn around and go, I'm taking you to court. It costs money to do that. It costs you more money to do that than it would do just to pay the license. That's what they rely on. So you would essentially have to be at the mercy of a class action lawsuit where you get a large number of people that simultaneously sue, and then hope that you get some sort of sympathetic outcome. But because you've signed up to this in your terms, then there's a very high chance you're not just going to get dismissed. You can bet your bottom dollar that they've got those eventualities coded into their terms and conditions. I notice sometimes when I go into Steam that games will have very small updates, just a few kilobytes. So it's obvious it's not any kind of update for the game itself. And I suspect that it is a simple update to the license to allow you to play these games. I do suspect that's what it actually is. And without that renewal, you're probably not going to get access to the game. And this is what it is now. This is where we're at. And it does worry me. Now, people might say, well, these game companies aren't going to go away. Valve's not going to go away. It makes a stack load of money. GOG, surely they're okay. They make games as well as distribute them. Well, if you'd have gone up to most people in the mid-80s, and I would imagine even going in towards the mid to late 80s, and you'd have said to them, in a decade, Commodore won't exist. In 1994, they won't be around anymore. At that point, at the height of Commodore's success with the C64 and the brilliance of the Amiga, you'd have been laughed at. People would have said, there's no chance. I suppose in the early to mid-80s, with the Sinclair Spectrum computer being a huge success, the idea that Sinclair would no longer be a thing, that it would be sold to Amstrad, and the Spectrum name would be owned by Amstrad. I'm sure before that happened, I don't know what year it happened, when it around 86, 87, 88, round about then, but I'm pretty certain people would have looked at you and thought, are you serious? The ZX Spectrum is hugely successful. But it happened. You know, Sir Clive Sinclair was spending an exorbitant amount of money on developing other tech. And that tech was stuff like, I don't know, his Sinclair C5, which was hugely expensive. The Sinclair QL was a laborious task to get that out. I believe it was largely down to software, but I'm not sure. But they ended up in difficulties, and Amstrad came along and bought them. You know, when Amstrad took over, it's because the Spectrum range of computers suddenly started to look like the CPC range of computers from Amstrad. The built-in cassette player, rectangular plastic. Sinclair lost its, the Spectrum lost its distinctive design. So you know that happened around that time. And Sinclair, that was it. Commodore went from a very secure position, and with a lot of crazy management decisions, and the creation of too many computers that lack cross-platform compatibility. It wasn't long before they ended up going out the window in 1994. Ironically, when they actually had a decent games console, a CD32. The point is, they went. Companies do go. It only takes a catalogue of bad decisions, consumer confidence to evaporate, and consequently investors start to hesitate to plough money into the company for the stocks, for the share values to start to plummet. And people start selling their stocks and shares in the company. It happens. History is replete with that. Big companies do go under. Sony have found themselves in difficulty. The PlayStation pretty much pulled them through. They shut down a lot of their divisions a few years back. And like I've said, you can look at the lack of hi-fi. Some traditional audio companies or video companies like Iowa. I mean, they had hi-fis all over the place. They were massive. Personal stereos and hi-fi systems, VHS video systems and DVDs. They were all the rage, and then it's gone. The companies have either downsized tremendously, been bought out by other companies, or just ceased to exist altogether. So, again, these were big companies. They weren't fly-by-night corporations. They had a long established history. And even, like I say, there's some businesses just decide to call it a day. There's a strong possibility at some point Microsoft might decide, hey, this Xbox thing isn't for us anymore. We're just going to go back to to software, to operating systems. They got rid of remember the whole television thing with the Xbox One? That's gone. 13 years later, sorry. Gone. They've downsized their operation. Look how many people that were developing games for the Series X. Look how many of those companies have gone. They're certainly not expanding the division, are they? You look at the fact that their handheld device that they outsourced to another hardware manufacturer. They didn't do it themselves. They basically bought the rights to stick their badge on somebody else's technology. That's what Commodore did with the Amiga, by the way. They just bought the tech. They didn't design it. So, there is that sense. Well, they're too big. Oh, they'll do something. Oh, before they go under, they'll give you the ability to download all this stuff. Why? Do you think in the death throes of a major company, making sure that the end user has access to stuff, which would prove costly for them to be able to do that, do you seriously think that's happening at that point? Do you think that's what they're thinking about? No, they're thinking about how to get the hell out of it with as minimum expenditure as possible. The consumer just gets the bullet. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. The consumer will bite the bullet. They won't make any provision. That's what the whole thing about the Stop Killing Games thing is all about. We see it with games. You look at the number of servers that get shut down. And that's it. You can't play the game anymore. You lose that provision to be able to play it. Because it's all server side. In like a lot of the online games. Look at that. That's sun. It's a nice day. Oh, some clouds up there, but it is a nice day. But yeah, I mean, the point I'm making is that we see this. History is replete with this. So why would we think it wouldn't happen? I shudder to think what would happen if Valve shut down with all of the PC games I've got. So like I say, there's every possibility that these companies can go, and I say it doesn't always follow that it's the companies going under. They just decide to cost cut. They decide the nature of that business isn't for them. So they either sell off that part of the business or they shut it down. But some of you out there might be surprised to know that there were a lot of companies that made video games in the 80s that had absolutely no video game software experience at all. They were publishers. British Telecom, that runs the back then ran the telephone networks in this country. They had game publishing division. There were some TV channels had software. There's a lot of companies jumped on the bandwagon. And this is what I'm saying. Like, what would happen? It'd be all gone. And then I get the argument, well, if your PlayStation 1 blew up, but yeah, you could probably get another PlayStation off the internet, or at least get that repaired. You see that there are places that do repair old tech. There are loads of videos on YouTube of individuals that get the equipment to be able to test components on a motherboard. And if you've got the patience, it's doable. You know, they just buy the chip or a capacitor. Usually it's something like that that's gone wrong. A connection. So there are ways around that, but you know, they say you can probably buy a second-hand one off eBay. So, you know, this is what I'm saying, that there would be ways around it, but your digital games library's gone. How'd you get around that? It's a very, very tricky situation to deal with. Very difficult situation to deal with. It's quite busy in here today. Anyway, I've not got much left to say on it really. I just think that if you're not careful, you can lose God knows how many thousands in games. A lot. So yeah, like I say, big edit there. There's quite a few people. But yeah, like I say, you've got like to consider that. What would you do? But PC gaming, there's no real alternatives now with that. The physical games on PC are virtually non-existent. And so, you know, with all of that, you got to look at it and go, well, what do you do? What do you do with it? How do you have any confidence? You just got no choice. You can't buy physical media on PC now. In most cases, you might get the odd collector. But even with them, they come with a code, not a disc. And the same is happening now with consoles. Look at the Switch 2. There's a lot of those games now, even if they come with a cartridge, it's just a key that unlocks the game. It's not actually got the game on it. It's, you know, where we're at. Sony and Microsoft are following suit. I mean, look at the difficulty it actually is in getting some of the physical media for the Xbox Series X. There's quite a bit of trouble in finding it, even on Amazon, you know, which is a place that you would expect to be able to pick up physical copies of games. It's all going away. You know, PlayStation will follow suit, and then that'll be it. It will go digital. It's what they want. It gives them absolute control over your software. It gives them absolute control over your software, over your library, over the things that you want to do. They can tell you when, where, and how, and there's nothing you'll be able to do about it. And like I say, it's a concern. It's a big concern for anybody that has, like me, you know, you play games on PC. It's what puts me off a lot of the times. It's, you know, even though I've got a decent PC, I still lean towards trying to get the physical media on console. And I say even that these days is not necessarily a good thing. So, you know, the disc quite often doesn't have the game on it, or, you know, it needs a huge patch just to work. Them manoeuvring us into that area where physical media will be gone, and we'll be just left with gaming on their terms and hope that they don't go under. We'll pay more and have nothing. That's the nature of it these days. You pay more and have nothing. Anyway, I'll call it there. I'll go back home and I'll edit this. So I'll call it there, and I will catch you all later.